Buying a home in these New York neighborhoods in 2025 would be the biggest mistake of your life. With crashing property values and zero return on investment, these places are deep financial sinkholes. In this video, we're exposing the top 10 worst neighborhoods in New York to buy a home, saving you from making a decision you'll regret for the rest of your life. East Harlem, often referred to as El Barrio, has long been a culturally rich and historically significant neighborhood in Upper Manhattan. Known for its Puerto Rican heritage, vibrant murals, and soul food institutions, it's a community that pulses with energy and pride. But beneath the surface, East Harlem's housing market in 2025 is becoming increasingly precarious. And for prospective homeowners, the risks are mounting. Over the past decade, East Harlem has seen a wave of gentrification, with sleek new condo buildings popping up along Lexington and 2nd Avenues. On paper, it looks like a neighborhood on the rise. Median home prices have climbed to over $840,000. And many developers have positioned the area as the next frontier for Manhattan real estate. But that rise hasn't come with the kind of sustainable growth you'd expect. Much of the new construction caters to high-income buyers, even as the average household income in East Harlem hovers under $40,000. That disconnect means many new units sit empty, while long-term residents are priced out. Adding to the uncertainty is aging infrastructure. East Harlem's public housing stock, one of the largest concentrations of NY-shaped properties in the city, has fallen into serious disrepair. Persistent issues with mold, lead paint, heating failures, and broken elevators continue to affect thousands. The city has promised investment, but progress is slow, and the broader neighborhood is still battling overcrowded schools, limited hospital capacity, and an underfunded public transit system. Crime rates, while lower than in decades past, remain higher than the Manhattan average. Petty theft and assaults are still common, especially near poorly maintained public spaces. And while cultural landmarks like the Museo del Barrio and La Marqueta have attracted some tourism, they haven't translated into widespread economic revival. For buyers hoping to make a long-term investment, the market here is confusing. Prices are inflated by speculation, not supported by income or infrastructure. Unless the city makes a massive push to fix housing quality, improve schools, and close the wealth gap, East Harlem may be heading toward a crash. Right now, it's a neighborhood stuck between two identities, and neither side offers real security to someone looking to plant roots. Located in southeastern Brooklyn, Canarsie was once seen as a quiet, stable, and middle-class enclave, a haven for working families seeking space and affordability outside the city's core. But in 2025, the area faces a troubling crossroads, making it one of the worst neighborhoods in New York to buy a home right now. At first glance, Canarsie seems appealing. Tree-lined streets, modest single-family homes, and proximity to Jamaica Bay give it a suburban feel within city limits. The median home price hovers around $640,000, which seems like a bargain compared to much of Brooklyn. But that lower price point is more of a warning sign than a deal. Values here have begun to slip, and there's little to suggest they'll rebound soon. One of the biggest issues is flooding. Canarsie is part of FEMA's expanded flood zones, and with rising sea levels and more frequent storm surges, homeowners are increasingly burdened by high flood insurance costs and property damage. The neighborhood was hit hard by Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and has struggled ever since to fully recover. Despite efforts by the city to improve drainage and upgrade seawalls, climate risk is now baked into the long-term outlook. Transportation is another concern. While Canarsie is technically served by the L train, the commute to Manhattan can exceed an hour, and service disruptions are common. Bus routes are slow and inconsistent, making the area feel more isolated than its map location suggests. This lack of transit convenience discourages younger buyers who prioritize connectivity and flexibility. Economically, the area is stagnating. Small businesses along Rockaway Parkway have been closing in waves, and foot traffic is down. Public schools in Canarsie face overcrowding and limited resources, pushing families to look elsewhere. Crime, while not rampant, has ticked upward, especially property crimes, like break-ins and auto theft. Perhaps most troubling is the decline in long-term investment. Unlike neighboring areas such as East New York or Brownsville, which are seeing targeted redevelopment and rezoning, Canarsie has largely been left out of the city's growth strategy. Without strong incentives to attract developers or bolster infrastructure, the neighborhood risks falling into a slow decline. For prospective homebuyers, the risks in Canarsie are layered: climate, economic stagnation, transit inefficiency, and lack of investment. What once felt like a hidden gem is now a high-risk bet. Hunts Point, located in the southeastern section of the South Bronx, has long been known for its industrial roots and working-class identity. It's home to the massive Hunts Point Food Distribution Center, one of the largest in the world, and has a deep cultural history, particularly within Latino and Black communities. But in 2025, Hunts Point stands out as one of the worst neighborhoods in New York to buy a home, largely due to a cocktail of environmental, economic, and quality of life challenges that continue to pile up. One of the most glaring concerns is pollution. Hunts Point is surrounded by highways, heavy truck traffic, and industrial facilities, which has resulted in some of the worst air quality in New York City. Asthma hospitalization rates in the South Bronx are among the highest in the country, and residents have long complained about the impact of diesel emissions and waste processing plants on their health. For homebuyers, this environmental burden not only affects quality of life, it can also depress long-term property values. Despite modest efforts to green the area, like the revitalization of Hunts Point Riverside Park, major systemic issues remain. Infrastructure is aging, public housing developments are deteriorating, and crime remains a persistent concern. The 41st Precinct, which covers Hunts Point, continues to report above-average rates of violent crime, particularly robberies and assaults. While overall crime in NYC has decreased in the last decade, Hunts Point has not seen the same level of safety gains. The housing stock is another challenge. Much of it is older and in poor condition, with a significant portion dedicated to public housing or subsidized rentals. For private buyers, options are limited and often come with significant repair costs. There's also little momentum for gentrification or redevelopment, meaning equity growth is likely to remain stagnant for the foreseeable future. Add to that the neighborhood's relative isolation. Hunts Point is separated from the rest of the Bronx by the Bruckner Expressway, and while there are local bus routes, subway access is limited. The nearest station is typically a long walk or bus ride away, making commutes inefficient and frustrating for residents who work in other parts of the city. While Hunts Point has heart, resilience, and cultural depth, the structural challenges are too big to ignore. Until the city takes aggressive steps to address environmental injustice, crime, and disinvestment, Hunts Point will remain a high-risk zone for homebuyers looking for long-term stability and growth. Brownsville, tucked in eastern Brooklyn near the border of East New York, has one of the most distinct reputations in all of New York City, and not for the right reasons. Known for its dense concentration of public housing, deep-rooted poverty, and long-standing struggles with crime, Brownsville remains one of the riskiest neighborhoods to buy a home in 2025, despite broader trends of gentrification sweeping across Brooklyn. The most pressing issue here is public safety. Brownsville consistently ranks near the top for violent crime in New York City. The 73rd Precinct, which serves the area, reports some of the highest rates of shootings, assaults, and robberies. While there have been community-led efforts to curb violence, progress has been uneven. For potential homeowners, especially families or retirees, safety concerns remain a major deterrent. Another issue is economic stagnation. Brownsville has one of the lowest median household incomes in the city, hovering below $40,000, and a disproportionately high unemployment rate. Commercial investment has been minimal, and while a few new businesses have opened along Pitkin Avenue and Livonia Avenue in recent years, large portions of the neighborhood remain underdeveloped. Grocery stores, quality schools, and recreational spaces are limited, which puts additional pressure on residents and lowers the overall quality of life. The housing stock in Brownsville is also problematic. Much of it consists of aging public housing operated by NYCHA, many of which suffer from years of deferred maintenance, leaks, mold, and even heat outages during winter. While there are some private properties on the market, they're often in need of serious repairs and may not appreciate significantly over time due to neighborhood conditions. There's very little momentum for rapid revitalization, meaning home values are likely to remain stagnant or even decline if economic conditions worsen. Transit access is decent, with multiple subway lines like the 3, L, A, and C running nearby, but long commutes and outdated stations can make daily life difficult. Plus, Brownsville still suffers from the stigma of being unsafe, which impacts both demand and perception, key factors in home value. Unless there's a dramatic shift in investment, education, policing reform, and infrastructure, Brownsville will remain one of the least advisable places to plant roots or purchase property in New York. For most buyers looking for stability, appreciation, and quality of life, the risks here are just too steep. Jamaica, Queens has long been considered a major transportation and commercial hub outside Manhattan, with JFK Airport nearby and the Jamaica Center Transit Station linking multiple subway lines and the Long Island Railroad. But in 2025, it's one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in New York City. Not because it lacks promise, but because that promise remains frustratingly unrealized. At first glance, Jamaica looks like a smart bet. There's been significant rezoning and development in the past decade, including a flurry of high-rise apartments, hotels, and mixed-use buildings. However, these rapid changes haven't translated into a better quality of life for many residents. In fact, they've created a surge in overdevelopment without the infrastructure to support it. Streets are more congested, public schools remain underfunded, and transit delays have worsened despite the area's central location. A major concern is that home prices have risen faster than the neighborhood's fundamentals justify. Median home values in Jamaica have climbed past $600,000 in some parts, steep for an area still grappling with high crime rates, underperforming schools, and a lack of economic investment beyond large real estate projects. Much of the new construction is marketed toward investors or higher-income renters, not long-term homeowners. That's created a mismatch between who lives here and who it's being built for, leading to hollow growth and speculative pricing. Jamaica's crime rates are also higher than the city average. While not the most dangerous neighborhood in Queens, it has seen a stubborn rate of robberies, assaults, and property crimes, particularly near transit stations and in less policed areas. These persistent safety issues have made many buyers hesitant, especially families with young children or older adults. Add to that the transient nature of much of its housing stock, and Jamaica begins to look like a high-risk market. Many new residents come and go, either passing through on the way to better neighborhoods or renting temporarily for proximity to the airport or transit. That churn contributes to an unstable housing market where prices may drop if demand from commuters and renters dips. In short, Jamaica is a classic case of promise without payoff. On paper, it has all the ingredients of a growing urban hub, but the lack of follow-through on safety, education, and long-term community development makes it one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in NYC in 2025. The Hub and Melrose neighborhoods in the South Bronx are often cited as the heart of the borough's commercial activity, centered around the bustling intersection known simply as the Hub. Historically, a vibrant shopping and transportation hub, This area remains a critical gateway for residents traveling across the Bronx and beyond. However, in 2025, these neighborhoods rank among the worst places to buy a home in New York City, burdened by persistent challenges that have yet to be fully addressed despite ongoing redevelopment efforts. One of the biggest issues in the Hub Melrose is public safety. Crime rates remain significantly higher than citywide averages, with violent crimes such as assaults, robberies, and gang-related activity still a daily concern for residents. While there have been improvements compared to decades past, the pace of progress is slow, and many families hesitate to settle here due to safety worries. This directly impacts the housing market. Buyers are wary of investing in properties when personal security is uncertain. The neighborhood's infrastructure and public services also lag behind. Sidewalks and streets in some areas suffer from neglect, and public transportation, while extensive, is frequently overcrowded and subject to delays. The local subway stations, including the 2, 5, and 6 lines, can be unsafe at night, further complicating mobility for residents. Additionally, schools in the area face challenges with funding, overcrowding, and underperformance, driving families to look elsewhere for better educational opportunities. Economically, the Hub Melrose is caught in a difficult spot. Though some commercial revitalization has taken place, many storefronts remain vacant or occupied by businesses struggling to survive. Employment opportunities are limited, and the local economy heavily relies on small retail and service industries that are vulnerable to broader economic downturns. Housing in the area is predominantly composed of older walk-up buildings and public housing complexes, many of which show signs of deferred maintenance. While new developments have begun to appear, they are often unaffordable for long-term residents and tend to cater more to investors. This has led to concerns about gentrification and displacement, even as the overall housing stock struggles with quality and safety issues. With home prices stagnant or declining, and a host of socioeconomic factors weighing heavily, the Hub Melrose remains one of the least desirable neighborhoods for home buyers in New York City in 2025. The combination of crime, underfunded services, and an unstable housing market means buyers should proceed with caution in this challenging part of the Bronx. East New York, located in eastern Brooklyn, has long been one of New York City's most economically distressed neighborhoods. Despite numerous revitalization promises over the years, in 2025, it remains one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in New York City due to ongoing struggles with crime, housing instability, and limited economic opportunity. One of the most pressing issues in East New York is its high crime rate. The neighborhood consistently ranks among Brooklyn's most dangerous, with elevated levels of violent crime such as shootings, assaults, and robberies. While community policing initiatives and outreach programs have been implemented, the reality on the streets remains a serious concern for prospective homebuyers. Safety fears heavily impact the neighborhood's appeal and depress property values. East New York also faces significant housing challenges. Much of the housing stock consists of aging, overcrowded apartment buildings, and public housing projects, many of which suffer from neglect and maintenance problems. Although there have been recent new developments aimed at attracting middle-income residents, affordability remains a critical barrier for many longtime residents, and displacement fears linger. The neighborhood struggles with a high eviction rate and an unstable rental market, contributing to housing insecurity. Economically, East New York has seen slow growth. Job opportunities are limited, with many residents relying on low-wage or unstable employment. This economic stagnation compounds social challenges, including a high poverty rate well above the city average. Local schools have struggled with underfunding, low graduation rates, and limited resources, pushing families to consider relocating to areas with better education options. Infrastructure in East New York also presents concerns. Public transit access exists via the A, C, J, and Z subway lines, but overcrowding and delayed service are frequent issues. Street conditions and public spaces vary widely in quality, and community services like parks and libraries are unevenly distributed. While some pockets of East New York show signs of potential revitalization, the overall picture in 2025 is one of a neighborhood still fighting for stability and growth. The combination of crime, housing insecurity, economic hardships, and infrastructure deficits make East New York a risky and challenging place to buy a home this year. Potential buyers should approach cautiously and consider these complex factors before investing in this part of Brooklyn. Far Rockaway, situated on the eastern end of the Rockaway Peninsula in Queens, has long struggled with economic hardship and social challenges, and in 2025, it remains one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in New York City. While its beachfront location offers potential, persistent issues have kept housing prices stagnant or declining, deterring many prospective buyers. One of the biggest problems in Far Rockaway is economic distress. The neighborhood experiences high unemployment rates and widespread poverty, with many residents relying on government assistance or low-wage jobs. This economic struggle limits local spending power, affects business development, and contributes to a cycle of disinvestment. The lack of stable economic opportunities has also led to brain drain, with younger residents leaving in search of better prospects elsewhere. Crime remains a major concern. Far Rockaway faces elevated rates of violent crime and property crime, including gang-related activity and drug trafficking. Though local law enforcement has increased patrols and community programs in recent years, many residents still feel unsafe. This perception of insecurity strongly impacts the neighborhood's desirability and depresses home values. Housing conditions in Far Rockaway reflect its economic challenges. Many buildings are older and poorly maintained, with a mix of public housing, single-family homes, and small apartment complexes. Rising housing costs in other parts of NYC have not translated into rising prices here, largely because of these structural and social problems. Instead, many homeowners face declining property values and difficulty selling. Additionally, the neighborhood has seen ongoing issues with foreclosures and tax delinquencies. Far Rockaway's infrastructure and services also lag behind much of Queens. Public transit options exist, including the A train and several bus lines, but commute times are long, and service can be unreliable. Public schools in the area have historically underperformed compared to city averages, and resources for families and youth programs are limited. Despite recent efforts to revitalize parts of the Rockaways with new businesses and beachfront development, Far Rockaway's deep-rooted challenges have prevented meaningful change. For homebuyers, the risk of further price declines and the neighborhood's ongoing struggles with crime, economy, and services make it a tough choice in 2025. Unless major investments are made, Far Rockaway is likely to continue facing an uphill battle in attracting and retaining residents. Located in the Western Bronx, Fordham has long been a hub for education and commerce, anchored by Fordham University and the bustling Fordham Road shopping district. However, despite these landmarks, Fordham remains one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in New York City in 2025 due to persistent socioeconomic issues and declining housing market prospects. One of the primary concerns in Fordham is the high crime rate, particularly violent crime and property offenses. While the neighborhood has benefited from increased police presence and community initiatives in recent years, safety concerns persist and heavily influence buyer hesitation. Residents frequently report incidents related to gang activity, drug dealing, and theft, which impacts the overall sense of security and livability. Economically, Fordham struggles with widespread poverty and unemployment. A significant portion of the population relies on low-wage jobs or public assistance, creating financial instability for many families. This economic hardship contributes to disinvestment in housing and local businesses, with many storefronts along Fordham Road appearing vacant or underutilized. Additionally, while Fordham University injects some economic activity into the area, its benefits largely bypass the surrounding residential communities. Housing in Fordham is a mixed bag, but largely characterized by aging stock that requires significant maintenance. There are many affordable housing units and older apartment buildings, but many face deterioration, lack of upkeep, and sometimes code violations. The neighborhood also has a notable amount of public housing, which, while providing necessary shelter, often comes with challenges related to overcrowding and limited resources. Public services and infrastructure in Fordham also lag behind. Schools in the area are generally underperforming compared to city averages, with lower graduation rates and fewer resources for students. Public transit options are decent, with access to the Metro North Railroad and multiple subway lines, but overcrowding and delays remain a problem. Though Fordham's central location and cultural landmarks hold promise, the neighborhood's ongoing struggles with crime, economic hardship, and aging infrastructure make it a risky investment for homebuyers in 2025. Without significant improvements and revitalization efforts, property values are unlikely to see meaningful gains, and the area may continue to experience population stagnation or decline. Coney Island is famous worldwide for its historic boardwalk, iconic amusement parks, and beachside attractions. Once a thriving destination for entertainment and summer getaways, this Brooklyn neighborhood carries a nostalgic charm that still draws visitors. However, despite its appeal, Coney Island remains one of the worst neighborhoods to buy a home in New York City in 2025 due to several deep-rooted challenges that affect the local housing market and residents' quality of life. One of the biggest issues facing Coney Island is its economic instability. While there have been efforts to revitalize the area with new developments and tourism-driven businesses, the benefits have not fully translated into sustainable growth for the residential community. Many local jobs are seasonal and low-paying, tied closely to the amusement industry or service sector, leaving residents vulnerable to economic downturns. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, exposed these weaknesses as tourism declined sharply, causing job losses and economic strain. Crime also remains a concern. Coney Island experiences a higher-than-average rate of violent crime and property offenses compared to other Brooklyn neighborhoods. Residents and potential homebuyers often cite safety as a major worry, which depresses housing demand and contributes to price stagnation or decline. The housing stock in Coney Island is a mix of older multifamily homes, public housing complexes, and newer developments. However, many properties require significant repairs or renovations, and public housing units face ongoing issues with maintenance and overcrowding. Affordability is somewhat better here than in much of Brooklyn, but that is often offset by the neighborhood's other challenges. Environmental factors also weigh on the market. Coney Island is highly vulnerable to flooding and storm damage, especially after Hurricane Sandy in 2012 caused widespread destruction. Although infrastructure improvements have been made, concerns about climate change and rising sea levels continue to deter long-term investment. Public services and schools in the area have struggled with underfunding and underperformance, further limiting the neighborhood's appeal to families and long-term residents. Transportation access is reasonable, with subway lines connecting to Manhattan and other parts of Brooklyn, but commuting times can be long and crowded. All these factors combine to make Coney Island a risky and potentially unstable place to buy a home in 2025. Without major economic investment, improved public safety, and climate resilience measures, the neighborhood's housing prices may face continued downward pressure in the coming years. Want to learn more about the do's and don'ts of home buying in 2025? Click the video on the screen right now.